Hey peeps, Erin Zen Warrior here. How you all doing? So, I love the construct of the archetypes. I think they're a super valuable way for us to understand our shadows and our light, because every archetype actually has the quality of both. And as we go through witnessing our Saboteur, which is one of the 4 main archetypes everybody has, as we go through witnessing our Saboteur, which is when we take this journey internal and we stop looking out into the world going, she got in my way, he got in my way, my parents did this, etc., etc., my partner did that. As we get into understanding our Saboteur, we can start to understand where we are compromising who we are and falling into a not self. What it takes to challenge your Saboteur archetype is self-esteem. And there are many, many ways this plays out. You know, the standard like procrastination kind of quality we have sometimes about doing our taxes. I was talking the other day with a very good old friend of mine about getting some advertising out there for her as a coach, because she's very, very talented in guiding people. She's a great projector. She's done a lot of different work, a lot of different courses. But she's like, I just can't get out there. And I was like, as a third line, just do it. And if you make a mistake, you refine the process. That's the process of experimenting in life, is you kind of have to stick your hand in the fire to work out how to navigate the fire a little bit. And so better to get out there than do something than to never do anything, right? And because there's that perfectionistic quality in there, and she was like, oh, you know, Virgo doesn't like to do anything, and she's got some Virgo in her chart and stuff. And I can understand that. I've got perfectionistic qualities through my charts. It's like, well, you have to realize that if you never do anything, you never do anything. If always the reason for not doing something is perfectionism, or what if it doesn't go well, you've got to realize that this is actually your Saboteur at play. So that's an interesting way that's actually come up over a conversation I've been having with a very old friend of mine from my old ashram. And, you know, we were taught a lot of coping mechanisms through the internal journey. Like, that's really what we were taught in our ashram, was about the internal journey. But just because you're taught all of those things and you're given all of those skills doesn't actually mean that you're any good at them, right? So anyway, take this forward to relationship, and this can be friendship, relationship with your child, relationship with your partner, relationships at work. Your Saboteur is very much the way that you are going to get in your own way in all elements. But in relationship, it's the very way you compromise yourself in relationship and give way to the other. And often when we do this, what we are allowing is for the poor behavior of another to play out. So what a lot of people think when we talk about self-esteem is, oh, why would you let someone talk to you that way? No, it's not so much about that. It's about how you talk to others. So it's actually a much more internal journey. It's not, you don't get to talk to me like that. It's like, I'm going to tell you what I need to tell you to honor myself. And that's quite a different thing. It may present the same way, but it may not be the actual same thing. So for example, I could tell you not to talk to me in a certain way, or I could say, when you talk to me like that, it feels like this, and I don't like it, and I want to disengage at that point. And that's a very, very different way of talking. Another thing that you might do in relationship is like, I hear that you want to go and do X. That sounds great. I actually don't want to go and do it. Now, in relationship, a lot of the time, we end up going and doing something we don't want to do, because that's what you do in a relationship. In fact, we're programmed to do bullshit like that, right? Oh, well, I'm going to be a good partner, so I'm going to go along to that work do that my partner has on, even though I really, really, really don't want to go. I'm going to go along because that's what a good partner does. Even though my whole body says, no, thank you, right? So if I was going to have good self-esteem, I would follow that my body was just saying no. So I'd go to my partner and I'd go, look, I always want to support you. But the truth is my body just says no to this. It just doesn't feel right, you know. And so the intuition that's happening in my whole organism is no, thank you. And so I love you very much. Have a nice time, but I don't want to go. Now, there's some interesting play outs in relationships. And I see this between some of my clients where I do couples mentoring and things like that. I don't want to say counseling because that's not quite true. It's more mentoring around how to honor each other. Whereas counseling is a different thing. Yeah. And like one will be like, well, I want to go to this thing. And the other one will be like, well, I don't want them to go. It's like, well, here's the thing. In relationship, we can express that we don't want the other to go, and we can express why. I don't want you to go to that thing because when you go, you come back full of all of these ideas and I feel unsafe. That's an expression and an informing, and we can always inform the other of where we are at. And that's actually something within human design. I like to point out that we all bring a bit of, all of our different designs bring this genius with them. You know, the manifestor and the manifesting generator have this strategy of informing. And they actually like to be informed. So that means if we're accounting for 40% of the world, we also learn to inform back, even if that's not our strategy. Good informing is always good relationships. So I can inform someone when X happens, I feel jealous. It's still my problem, right? But I'm letting them know where I'm at, and I'm opening a conversation. If I then think I get to control the other because I feel jealous or because I feel afraid, this is where the conversation opens, and someone who's coming from good self-esteem goes, I hear you. I love you. I'm still going to go, but not because I don't care how you feel, but because it feels correct for me to go. And that's me honoring myself. But I still hear you, and I understand where you're coming from, and I'm willing to have more conversation around this. But ultimately, that's a you problem, not a me problem, because I'm not going to do these things. If I do come back full of ideas, maybe that's why I go. Maybe that's part of who I am. And as a result, I'm honoring my system because I want to go and get those experiences. Perhaps we need to talk about whether you really like me for who I actually am in this way, and whether you can accept that this part that maybe you don't like, you can still live with or not. You know, so it's a very, very different way of approaching relationship, is to go, instead of compromising myself, I really check in with myself, and I have the confidence and the self-esteem to express what I want and what I need. Keeping in mind that we do not get to control the other. And that's something that I think in this past cross, the last 400 years of the familial handshake, I give you a roof and you behave, that is breaking apart right now. So we're starting to see a lot of people going, I'm not going to do what you want just so that we can stay together. You know, I'm not going to compromise what I need just so we can stay together. But sometimes that comes out as, oh, well, I need you to be the way I need you to be. And it's like, no. I need to do what I need to do for myself, and I need the room to do that. But I also need to be informed about where you're at with everything. I also need to understand where you're coming from. And I think that that's a really interesting quality to relating, is everybody starts expressing themselves from the I feel, which we've been taught from the 90s, right? I feel. But then also understanding that I feel is an I thing. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the truth. It's very much a subjective reality, as is what I need to do for myself comes from my subjectivity. And so it can't be wrong, right? That's not really a thing. It's that it's correct for me. And as we move more into honoring each other, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. And as we go into what I would call conscious relating and differentiated or individuated relating, it's going to be really interesting to see how this builds intimacy, how this builds a closer connection, how this builds more understanding of each other, and more communication, more understanding. I personally really like the intimacy of connection through good conversation, and through conversation that brings understanding about each other without having to tell each other, well, that's right and that's wrong, and I can't deal with this and I can't deal with that, but more an understanding of, okay, I hear you. Let me see how that goes. Let's just see how it goes. It's been good so far. Let's see how that goes with that new information. The idea that we're going to all get married and live till death do us part, I'm not into the death sentence. I am into relating that evolves us. And sometimes a great relationship is something that brings evolution and quality disconnection that doesn't cause an entire meltdown of the world. We don't need to create a bonfire at the end of something. We can actually create something that's a really conscious, beautiful awakening. And for me, I just don't see why we all wouldn't want that. But that's just me. Love to hear your comments. Love to hear you like, subscribe, follow along, all of that stuff. See you on the upside.